Podcasting from beautiful South Florida, welcome to another episode of Your First 1,000 Clients, the show that focuses on how to create success first for yourself and then all the people in your world. Your First 1,000 Clients is hosted by CEO, advisor, and best-selling author, Mitch Russo. Listen as Mitch and his inspiring guests share how to turn your hidden assets into a rich recurring revenue stream. Discover revenue streams you never had, increase continuity profits, and help you acquire extraordinary value for your company and family. And now, here's your host, Mitch Russo.
Welcome to this moment in time when you get to chill out, tune in, and extract wisdom you could use to grow your business with your first 1,000 clients. So today, I have something special for all of my coaches in the audience. You know, as a coach myself, I realized I've been spending about 30 minutes per session on admin, and this started to become a problem once I had 2, 3, 4, and 5 clients a day. Now I'm wasting a lot of time right in the middle of the day, my peak time, on doing what I call $10 an hour work. So I started looking for a way to eliminate that work with software. And I tried many, many systems and none of them worked for me. The reason they didn't work for me is because they were very complex. I didn't have time to watch hours of videos. They were very expensive. I didn't want to spend $60, $80, or $100 a month or more on something just to help me manage my business. And then finally, I did things that no other software did that have made me very successful. And I wanted my software to mirror that too. Nothing ever showed up that would help me. So I did what I think all good entrepreneurs should do. When you find a problem, solve it. And that's what I did. So I created a software product called Client Folio. And Client Folio is a very inexpensive $29 a month platform that lets coaches scale to infinity with as many clients as they could possibly handle. And the goal of Client Folio is to make your life easier, to help you get more value, deliver more value to your clients, and get more testimonials. So that's what we do. And you could see it and try it for just $1 by going to getclientfolio.com. That's getclientfolio.com. Go give it a shot and let me know how you like it. And we'll go from there. Now on to my guest and his incredible story. So imagine, if you could, listeners, moving to another country at the age of 27 after refusing a place in the family business. With his high school Spanish background, he really had what he thought was the necessary tools to start working for an employer training call center employees. But something happened along the way. He discovered that he didn't just like it, he loved it. And in fact, what he loved most about it was the changes he saw in others, the motivation, the power he was able to give other people by teaching them something, by gifting them a profession that they could then use for the rest of their lives. In fact, he cared so deeply about these people, he eventually decided that he would start an organization to feed families, now feeding over 150 families as his contribution to this beautiful part of the world that he lives in. And as a result of that, he started his own company, is now the proud owner of the largest collection of restored American pinball machines and antique Rockola jukeboxes in Central America. So he leads his company into the future with a strong foundation in helping others, creating jobs, and enjoying life. Welcome, Richard Blank, to the show.
Miss, thank you so much. What an introduction. I will be able to live up to those expectations you just put there for your first 1,000 clients audience. And really, really happy to be here today with you.
Thank you very much. And by the way, you already have lived up to them, so don't worry about that part. Let's go back to the beginning, because this is really where I love to learn more about you. So let's take us back to the beginning. Tell us how this all started for you.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share my story with so many twists and turns. It begins back in Northeast Philadelphia when I graduated the proud Abington High School in 1991. All of my friends were going to Ivy League and they were looking to study law and medicine and architecture and engineering. And for me at that age, I really wasn't sure what to do, but I did know, Mitch, that my favorite class was in Spanish. So I doubled down on it. I went to University of Arizona and I was a Spanish communication major, focusing on rhetoric, public speaking, and nonverbal communication. And I also moved to Spain for a year, my junior year abroad. So I was there for 2 semesters, stayed over Christmas break and backpacked throughout Europe. And that really transformed my mind into A, mastering the language, realizing that a lot of the things, Mitch, in the United States that we hold so dear really doesn't matter when you're outside the States. I had a chance to have 55-minute conversations with people all over the world. So it really opened my eyes. And when I returned back to the United States, I realized I need some work experience. So when I was in college, I did an internship for Telemundo in Tucson. I worked 20 hours a week. I did promotions and public relations. So I did that for a couple of years. And under the influence of Miguel Quintana and Pedro Sevcek, these individuals were a big influence in me in regards to my public speaking and my own self-confidence. Post-grad, I worked for the importers of Corona. So Mitch, I always had fun jobs and always involved promotions, public relations, and sales. But the secret sauce was Spanish. I was marketable. I was bilingual. And once again, I was able to represent myself and my company in the best light by showing this good faith with those that are bilingual like myself. So when I was 27 years old, a very, very good friend of mine owned a call center in Costa Rica. He asked me to come down and do some training for just 2 months. When I was here, I fell in love with Central America. I also saw these bilingual, brilliant agents that were on the phone, that were converting calls and getting positive escalations and really showing the art of speech. So I guess, Mitch, I shed some skin that day. I called my parents and I let them know if you can get past their guilt, you can live anywhere in the world. And I think I wanted to try this for a while. I could always click my heels and come home and work at my family's real estate company, which would have been just fine. But Mitch, you and I had to take a chance. And so when I worked at my friend's call center, I was there for 4 years. I learned retention, customer support, sales, affiliate management, human resources, and accounting. I learned everything minus the C level. Okay, so I learned the business from the inside and out. And any business owner, entrepreneur, someone that wants to start their company, I always believe it's important to know what people do there for a living. And so by sitting amongst thousands of mid-20 Costa Ricans, I was able to hear the good times and the bad and the success and failures of working at a call center. And then it hit me. I realized there is ways to enhance the experience for the agent and for the client. Since we're friends, Mitch, I will be forthright with you. It took me into my mid-30s to have impulse control, maturity, and enough money saved. I felt that I was ready to throw my hat in the ring and to start this call center business. And I did. I started with 1 seat in 50 hours. I closed my first account February 6th of 2008. And little by little, I was growing. I first started renting a station from a glorified internet cafe, a blended center, so I could afford it. It was a turnkey station, paid the rent, paid the agent, made my margin. And once you grew to a couple dozen agents, it made sense to rent space.
So let's take a step back for a second here, because I'd like to dig a little deeper into that transition. We probably have some folks here listening that may still be working for their employer and maybe have perfected their craft over the course of several years and have been thinking about maybe going out on their own. You were at that moment in time when you had been training people. As you said, you observed the brilliance of some of the young people on your team. And more importantly, you were like a sponge absorbing as much as you could in learning. What did you then do? Did you say something to your employer? Did you one point approach your employer? Or was it one of these sort of things where just one day you didn't show up and made a phone call and said, by the way, I quit? How did you handle that?
Oh, the last thing you mentioned would have never happened. I was very loyal working with my friend. I don't even think I missed a day. And this was my friend. And this was an incredible opportunity that was given to me. It was almost like graduate school. I also realized that in my mid-30s, I knew what my value was and I know how much I could earn on an hourly basis and what my ROI was. And cracking the code of running a call center is really not that difficult, Mitch. It's really about empathy. Because if you treat people well, they come back. If not, they quit and then you don't have a business. So I spoke to my friend and I said, I think I had a good run. I'd like to try this out. He said, Richie, I'm going to miss you, but I'm going to wish you the best of luck. And so instead of being my consultant, this individual gave me some guidance and suggestions. And then the rest was up to me. I could have always continued working there and had a very stable and comfortable position, but it was my idea. Not just of starting a company, I really wanted to start a community. I wanted a call center culture. And I didn't go to Harvard or Yale. I'm not a business grad, but I do know this, that when you work with people and you elevate yourself, because I was excellent on the phone. And I also love script writing. There's something called a quality assurance department where there's KPIs, which are key performance indicators. So at the center, they had extreme structure. People were coachable. They were able to analyze the phone calls. And I found that fascinating. But besides just asking you your information and qualifying you, Mitch, I was really concentrating and focusing on the soft skills. How many times I said your name, If I was doing active listening for rebuttals, confirmation questions, were there any sort of positive escalations when I would make outbound phone calls where instead of getting hung up on by the gatekeeper, that's my biggest fan, transfers me the call and I'm letting you know how amazing a coworker is with you. So I'm just looking to give a first class sort of call experience. And also, since English is their second language, Mitch, I was really focused on vocabulary. So the agents had to study the thesaurus for similes so they can expand their vocabulary, be more strategic and diplomatic, and avoid using the word like help and use other words like guide, assist, and lend a hand. So these were the sort of things that reduced talk time, increased conversion ratios, and really gave the agents much more job satisfaction. And I'm not really saying I cracked a code or I'm a genius, but these were the certain things I heard every day that weren't addressed as much as I wanted to. And by putting those sort of strategic areas in place, I was only able to build upon it. And so from there, my attrition is low. I've had people with me over a decade, and they're the ones that have been promoted. And they're the leaders that I have here at this company.
That's unbelievable. And that's fantastic. We share a lot of common philosophies. When I build my power tribes for clients, the very first thing we do is we focus on building the culture before we even bring in a single person. So I have a culture system that I've developed over the years. And a lot of it is, like you said, it's based on empathy, but in my world, it's based on shared empathy. In other words, it's not just empathy flowing down from the top. It's creating a bubble of empathy in the entire community. And when everybody is in agreement as to what the values of that community are, very few people violate those values. So we provide guides and guideposts, if you will, to make sure that people stay within the scope of the community. And when they somehow don't, the community will self-correct. The community will take care of whatever disobedience or issues that come up with an individual, not because they're trying to act like the company. It's because they are preserving the value of what collectively they have built and are now a part of. Sounds like you've done many of the same things. And so that's incredibly valuable. And I was very intrigued by this concept of when you started talking to me, I think before we switched on the recorder, you talked about the perfect phone call. You talked about what would it take to get on the phone with somebody where you do not break rapport, but instead elevate the conversation to the next level. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because that's very, very interesting to me.
Well, absolutely. And it's very important to put into perspective that the agents need to feel comfortable making that call, regardless of what the vertical is. And so we're very selective, Mitch, of the campaigns that come in here. Besides fulfilling your needs, I have to fill the agent's needs. And we're in a very strict Catholic country. So I must ensure that their ethics and values and morals are not compromised and they can go home and tell their family what they do for a living. Okay, so let's just say that we're making an outbound prospecting business-to-business phone call. I can pretty much, through very simple steps, break down a phone call for you. And I think you'll enjoy it as well. I believe that every attention span is broken down into 30 seconds to 2 minutes. So let's just kind of use that as our base. Every conversation has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So we use that equation as well. We're making an outbound phone call, and let's just say we're calling your company for the first 1,000 clients. Mitch, quick question. Do you have somebody there that works with you that answers the phone at your company that I could use as an example? Somebody's name.
I have a VA who helps me with some outbound calling, but it's mostly for appointment setting. They do not try to close.
But that's fine. And what's this individual's name?
Tracy.
Okay, Tracy's perfect. So I call in the first 1,000 clients, and all of a sudden Tracy answers the phone. She goes, "Hello, it's Tracy, 1,000 clients. How may I help you?" I go, "Hey, how's the first 1,000 clients doing today?" So what I do immediately is do a company name spike. Not saying Tracy's not doing well, but hopefully better than Tracy. I'm not asking how Tracy is doing. I'm asking how your company is doing. In the first 3 seconds, I'm still using anonymity. Not for the whole call, that's shady. But my first impression is your information. So Tracy likes me, right? And the first thing she'll say to me is, "What is your name?" We call that the buffer boomerang technique. When someone asks me a question, if they have a negative tone, I got to buffer the negative tone. I got to name drop and say, "Tracy," boomerang it by saying, "That's an excellent question." Repeat the question. "My name is," throw it right back at you, "Richard Blank." And so there could be some buffer boomerangs with anybody on the call multiple times. So I answer Tracy. I readjust the tone. She likes my answer and says, "Okay, Mr. Blank, you'd like to speak to Mitch. Not a problem. I will transfer the call. Tracy, before you transfer me, I just want to let you know you did an excellent job, and I'm going to let Mitch know because that's a positive escalation. Of course, she wants to transfer. Transfer the call to Mitch. Mitch goes, hello, this is Mitch. Before I say anything, anonymity. I go, Mitch, I just got to let you know, Tracy's the best person you have working for you. And so automatically you like me. You're going to ask me a boomerang question. Hey, what's your name? Mitch, that's an excellent question. My name is Richard Blank. Hello, Richard Blank. So now we're in a conversation. I got you in there. Got a couple points, right? And so it's very important that when you ask me a second boomerang question, Richard, what does your company offer? Once again, Mitch, I'm so glad that you brought that up. What my company offers is A, B, C, and D. When I go over a list with you, that's a horizontal. I have to make sure that every single thing that I bring to you is presented almost like a dessert tray, where I can almost see your noise and your reaction to it. The worst thing salesmen and saleswomen do, Mitch, is desert pitching. You talk so much, there's no oasis to drink what you're saying. And so you just run through something. So let's say I go through A, B, C, and D, and you like A. It goes from horizontal to vertical. And then all of a sudden, I start asking you open-ended questions. And so at least I'm going to say at the end of that, hey, Mitch, I'm sure you like at least one. Or at least in the beginning, I'm raking you. You find out the one you like, ask the questions. Now, here's the most interesting part. People do have tail signs. I love micro expression reading, and everybody can read facial expressions and body language, but over the phone, we are eliminating 3 of our senses, your taste, touch, and smell. The scientists claim that when your senses are eliminated, the other ones expand. So I'm expecting you to have active listening, but also people claim you can't see somebody. I say quite the contrary. There's metaphysics, you have image streaming, and people claim that books are better than the movies. So I would encourage more adjectives and a lot more descriptions when you're speaking with people. Okay, so anyway, I'm on the phone with you, and every 30 seconds to 2 minutes, I am gauging at least your rate and your pitch, how fast you're going and how loud you're going. Your tone should always be consistent, yours. Match them if they're positive, but you should always be empathetic and confident. The mirror imaging technique, which you've spoken about and everyone knows, I believe should be done at your pace, how fast and how loud you're going. Why? Because every 30 seconds to 2 minutes, you might have a spike or a dip. You might adjust. And usually someone that's astute will realize that that's a perfect time to ask a confirmation, pin down, or even clarification question. Okay, just to move things forward. Now, people are capable of manipulating their tone, rate, and pitch. That's why I believe the greatest tell sign to ask these tie down and pin down questions is answering speed. That can't be controlled. That's subconscious. And so once again, once you see it, you can't unsee it. After 3 weeks, it becomes habit. You're still able to work simultaneously while you're also paying attention to people in regards to their phonetic tell signs, right? So if they ask these signs, you ask tie down, pin down, confirmation question. Why confirmation question, you say, Mitch? Well, since we're doing these Zoom calls and people are working from home, there's a very good chance a dog might be barking in the background. These things can kill calls. And so my suggestion is inadvertently and passive aggressively, first tell you how much you love dogs. That's the Me Too technique. But then follow up by saying, hey, Mitch, what's the name of your dog? And you're going to say Fluffy. Fluffy sounds great. Put him outside. So next thing you know, you put him outside, you come back, but I'm going to anchor you. I'm not pitching you before. I'm not continuing my pitch. You and I are going to talk a little bit about your dog Fluffy. And that's usually, Mitch, when you say to me, excuse me, what is your name again? I'm so glad you asked, Mitch. Once again, my name is Richard Blank. And now you're name dropping me for the rest of the call. So then we get to the conclusion of your call. And I'm going to recap it and rake it again. Hey, Mitch, since you still have me on the phone, you said you liked A. Remember B, C, and D. Oh, I like D. Here we go again. All of a sudden, I'm stacking open-ended questions. But I'm not done. I'm going to confirm all of your information through a military alphabet. Why? It's the cleanest form. And instead of ending the call, there's a very good chance you know somebody that served. So we're going to talk for another 5 minutes about my uncle that served in the Second World War, my dad in post-Korea. And then I'm still not done. When the phone call is finished, I'm going to follow up with an email to you with a positive written escalation about Tracy. Why? For when I call you back again and Tracy answers the phone and I reintroduce myself, she's going to say, Richard Blank. In 10 years, I've been working with Mitch. No one has ever written about me. Thank you so much. I'm going to transfer you right away. And so this is the sort of Richard circle where if you need to touch a company a couple of times, you make friends with people. This individual, Tracy, could tell you about your promotion, your company culture, any sort of anniversary that you have. And obviously, when you're making decisions on with whom to work with, you're probably going to ask Tracy. And Tracy's going to be like, I received 20 phone calls today. Richard Blank was the best. And I think you should definitely put him on the top of the pile. And so if you do these sort of structured 30-second to 2-minute positive escalation, spike and dip, raking, phonetic microexpression reading, I think you're going to be great. And as I was saying before, you might make less phone calls a day. You might be on the phone a little bit longer, but it's much more quality calls. And if you're planning on leaving a voicemail or doing just email template prospecting, my suggestion is to look at a LinkedIn profile or a website and get something custom made. So when you're doing this, like if you wrote me and started talking about pinball machines and jukeboxes, I'm going to read your entire email. And so those are the side of things that people will see you put a little bit of extra effort in.
Of course. Well, that was really very interesting. It was interesting for two reasons. One is because you so systemized the process and you've mapped it out step by step. And that does two things. Number one, it's obvious that this works because you've done this for so long and for so many years and over so many individuals who've made these calls. And number two, that you understand the psychology, even the NLP behind much of this. So when you're teaching people a system, the odds of them succeeding is much higher. And what you just basically did is you gave us a master class, if you will, on how to conduct a simple but effective prospecting call. So listeners, just to remind you, you can go back to yourfirst1000clients.com and you can see a full transcript of this show completely with the entire sequence that Richard has laid out for us. You could duplicate that by yourself by going to Richard's show page, Richard Blank, his episode page at yourfirst1000clients.com, and duplicate this magnificent process that you yourself can customize for your own business.
This episode of Your First 1,000 Clients is brought to you by VIA, the Virtual Entrepreneurs Association. All the tools, resources, discounts, education, and community to help you on your entrepreneurial mission. Think of VIA as the AAA or Swiss Army knife for business. From world-class education, cutting-edge learning, and networking events all over the globe, an active community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and discounts on over 671,000 business, dining, travel, and entertainment options. The average VIA member saves hundreds of dollars a month on the things they use for their business and personal life, while getting the education and support they need to grow their business. And for a limited time, you can get your free trial of VIA at viabusiness.com/Mitch. That's VEAbusiness.com/Mitch.
Now, I will say that there's elements of it that I wouldn't use. Like if someone constantly repeats my name or constantly tells me what a great question I'm asking, I get a little annoyed by that. It makes me feel as if they're gaming me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Now, I wouldn't say that's an excellent question. I'm giving you the template of what to use. You can't say it every time. And I couldn't agree with you more in regards to a name drop. I think that the pronoun of saying you is just as powerful. So I would suggest a 5-to-1 name drop. Do the name drop when you're doing a tie-down question. But the rest of the time, I would be saying you or are just for the emphasis and bringing you back in. Telling you that something's a great question, as I say before, it would sound repetitive. I'm glad you brought that up. It's something I could see you using, but it's really showing active listening. The most important thing is if someone is giving you a negative tone, instead of answering immediately, it's almost like in a director's class in high school, you're getting yelled at. And so I just want to make sure that once again, since they're meeting me for the first time, that we can speak to one another amicably and that there's a chance I can adjust the tone. But the goal is not to be slick or even to be clever, but there has to be some sort of assertiveness in order to move this conversation forward. Aggressiveness, you're going to hang up on me. Passive, you're going to be bored with me. But there has to be a way in order for me to answer your questions, find out what you're interested in, and sometimes use the Wu-Wei technique where it's least resistance. That's why I ask you open-ended questions, stacking. So you do the talking and I do all the active listening. And so you're just hearing more of a template. But when a conversation is going, I'm pretty much 60-40, 70-30, you talking, listening, because I just really want to know what you know. But Mitch, I got to bring up something that you make this podcast look easy. I've been doing this for years, but a lot of your audience does not see what happens off the air. It's called dedicated practice. And anybody that studied art or music or languages or just anything, they have to realize there's a lot of time put into it off the air. So any sort of times you can practice by yourself for self-reflection and self-analysis, you're going to be phenomenal. And unlike any sort of other activity that you do, where you might need to load up something, have some equipment, this is speaking. This can be done anywhere, anytime, at any place. And so my suggestion is to be constantly reviewing your delivery. And if you're actively listening to people on television or just in public, you should be analyzing their give and take styles, because if there's a crosstalk, if there's interruption, that's your fault. You're not understanding their pace. And also, secondly, you could say to somebody, hey, Mitch, for my clarification, was it A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3? Because I don't want to say, excuse me, what did you say? Could you repeat that? There's certain swords you could fall on in order to keep someone from not becoming ego defensive or going down rabbit holes, or you just getting frustrated. Is it manipulation? Okay, Mitch, sure it is. But there's a certain structure that I have here where at the end, I'm not forcing a hand or twisting an arm. You're just going to realize we've been on the phone for 12 minutes when you told me you only had 2 minutes. So go figure.
Well, see, again, this is all what I would call highly structured, formula-based selling. And I love it. It's very, very appropriate. And it's very valuable to be exposed to the master, if you will, and have you share this with us. Just as a note, I ran call centers most of my adult life. In my own company, we had 50 or so people that were on the phones constantly. Then with Tony Robbins, we had several hundred. And then when I sold my company to Sage, at Sage, presided over 300 people in call centers. So we were really, really focused on how to get the most, both out of the individuals who were doing the job, but more out of their time with potential customers. And a lot of what you shared are things that we've done, systems that we put in place. One of the most important tools, which I'd like for you to talk about, one of the most important tools for us, and something I've maintained in almost every selling situation, whether I'm working with a client or whether I'm doing it myself, is the use of a script. What we found is that a great script is not something that someone writes and hands to another. It is something that is a living document that evolves sometimes every day as it gets perfected over the course of time. So what we used to do is we would write a script, we would put it in the hands of our best people, and we would then record those calls and listen to them and ask them for the suggestions as to where they felt the script fell short. And over time, didn't take that long, maybe a month or two, we had a working script that was so powerful that we would get a 19% closing rate on a one-call close using these scripts. Do you find scripts to be valuable as well? And tell me, if you do, tell me why and how.
Absolutely. And I sometimes think the shorter is the better. If it needs to be a long strip, it needs to be broken up into certain pieces. A lot of the times the clients have unrealistic expectations in regards to how they write the script. They're expecting people to be sitting by the phone with the credit card at the ready. So a lot of the times it is rapport building. Of course, scripts can be adjusted. It's really just a roadmap in the beginning. You've run call centers. So in essence, the script is really about qualifying the call. But there are certain times that your third point could be brought up at the end or possibly in the beginning. I'm not sure where you're eating dessert during dinner. And so I think the agents need to just be well versed in the conversation and just to make sure that the steps are there. But I believe in the recording of the calls. I like the live role play. I believe in best practices and specific soft skills. I have noticed that when agents do stand up, they're breathing better and they're moving around a bit. Even though you can't see it on the phone, there are things called illustrators, where it's congruence, where your audio is matching the visuals, so your body is in motion with what's going on there. I think it's very important that people have sort of visual stimulations at their desk, because there might be certain things that could get you through a rainy Wednesday. Or how about this? A script is a script. And if an actor's not feeling well that day, they're going to sound plastic. They won't be a painting. They'll be a character, not in character. And even though you could be making these calls for years and your company's been around forever, every call with you is still raw. You're still Mitch, right? And it's still something that you still have the essence that what got you in this in the first place. And so with a lot of these people, they need to create that space or possibly have someone sitting next to them that are on a hot streak, that are capable of coaching, or even if they're two aces and they're at the same level, Maybe it's just something rubs off on you. And I know that they need to make a certain amount of calls per hour. And you're talking about ripping a great call and then going downstairs and listening to it. I've given people permission to put themselves on non-ready status or even training status. Like if you and I are sitting next to each other and Mitch, you're just having the best phone call ever. And I'm in between calls. I might pause for a minute. I'm not stealing time. I'm high-fiving my buddy, Mitch. I'm listening to him with his rebuttals. I'm sucking in that energy. I'm supporting you because it's a team effort. I'm not there for 20 minutes listening to you, but there's nothing wrong with adding wind in your sails. You look at me winking. I mean, so you just have that sort of best friend environment here.
Yep. I love it. I love it. Well, you know what? This has been great. I'm really glad we had this part of the conversation so far. I'd like for you to take a step back here and talk a little bit about the business itself. So you obviously, a call center business model is fairly standard. You have a sales team that goes and finds customers. You bring them in, you orient your customer, you then take what they're selling, create the scripts, and then assign a team. And then they begin calling. That part, I guess, is pretty repetitive and it's pretty simple. Get a little bit deeper into it. What do you do, for example, to ensure that you're profitable every quarter, every month? How do you stay profitable as a call center?
Less attrition, because when you're bringing in new agents, you just don't know. And there's that certain time of onboarding and training. So I do compete against Amazon and other large call centers here. And you do understand the difference between natural and forced attrition. If somebody's just not coming to work and doing their job, they have to go. I will lose people because of scheduling, distance, and a friend or a boyfriend or girlfriend working there. That will cost me money. So I will do everything I can to keep these agents that we've invested in. And my biggest thing, and I know we were going to cover it, is my gamification culture. I've created a certain retro arcade game room, which is a very safe, neutral environment for agents to meet others from other departments, let off steam, recharge batteries, or even just spend time with their boss there. And I've seen that instead of a cigarette, Instagram, or being alone, these individuals are making friends. And that's the sort of support that people may need, because you know this as well as I do. A lot of what happens outside of the office can affect what they do here. And so if you and I can recharge their batteries, give them job stability, Mitch, then they're able to go out of the office, confront any sort of challenges that they have. And this is that positive circle. And so besides bringing in new business and selective of my clients and not having any surprises with them and making suggestions, it's all about the core. If I do not have my people, if I cannot give them their dignity, not treat them like a number or a robot, then I will scale and I'll grow. And speaking about scaling, a lot of the times, and especially with your 300 agents, I'm sure you brought in people that might have not had call center experience, but were incredible people. And so it allows you to mold them and not have any bad habits. And so possibly giving this young agent a brand new perspective of a script and just to see how they read it compared to your top person could show you something you've never seen before. And so I'm so open-minded. And finally, my agents here are bilingual. English is their second language. So to me, it bears the mark of higher education, and they're walking into my center, Mitch, as a Division I player with structure and discipline. All you and I need to do is be a great coach and we can get the best out of them.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, again, going back to my own experience, one of the things that we found is that we wanted to get the best people. We'd hire people with lots of experience. And later we discovered that those were not the best people. In fact, what we discovered is that the person who came in with a completely blank slate and was willing to do what they were told, simply read the script and respond as we were explaining how to do so, just as you've explained before, actually had higher numbers than our clever, more interesting employees on the phone, because they ventured off into areas that made the call too long and they didn't close. The guy who read the script took it right down the path, literally like a bowling ball, right down the center of the alley, and he got the sale. And that's why we had a 19% closing rate on qualified callers. So this is the sort of stuff that makes somebody and something great, not just good. And it's these extra things that you've talked about today. Let's change gears for just a minute here. You're talking about gamification. Apparently, you seem to have a collection of pinball machines and jukeboxes. Get into that a little bit. Tell us, why did that start for you and how did you get started in the collecting business?
Mitch, didn't you used to go to the arcades in the 70s and 80s? Wasn't that the place to be?
Absolutely.
Your $5 had to last a whole Saturday. And so I loved it growing up. It was a wonderful culture during the 70s and 80s. The machines, the cabinets, everything was beautiful. And so when I came down here, hobby turned into an obsession. I have a huge call center, so I have the space. In Costa Rica, it's almost treasure hunting. People just, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So if they want to call it trash, call me Oscar the Grouch. I'll take them all. And so when I see something online, I will get my buddy in his truck. I'll drive a couple hours, kick a few tires. Next thing you know, I'm driving back to the office with a 1961 Ricola Regis for just a couple $100. And we have electricians here. And in the United States, there's a couple companies where I can order the parts. And the restoration is beautiful. And these machines are older than the agents. And when you listen to Elton John's Pinball Wizard, and it really talks about the flippers and the buttons and the lights, and you really get the experience. And what's amusing to me, Mitch, is when the agents go, I played pinball before, I played it virtually. I go, listen, buddy, there's a lot of things you do online that are not even close as when you do it in person. And so one of them is gaming. And I just found it, and they can always go home and play Xbox and PlayStation and the games on their phone. But why don't you and I give them a free play area where they can try something they've never done before? And when my clients walk into the center, they realize three things: that A, they don't have an arcade; B, look how I treat my people, and how I treat myself. And so that is very, very important for me, that people do have an area to let off steam and just have the best time.
Well, here in South Florida, we have a place called the Silver Ball Museum. It's a two-story building, dedicated two-story building with a fantastic restaurant and bar, but over 150 restored pinball machines that anyone can play as many as they want for $20. As long as you could stay there all day, all night for $20, you could play every game in there. You could do skee ball. You could do all these great things. And it's one of my favorite places in Florida. My daughter and I, whenever she's here, we try to get down there and we have lunch there. So we go, we play for an hour or an hour and a half. Then we go have a fantastic junk food meal like burgers and cheeseburgers and fries. And then we go back and we play some more. And of course, she's always trying to beat me and I'm always trying to beat her. And it just goes back to when we were kids. When I was her new dad, I was basically a kid. And when she was a little girl, we used to have competitions. And so it brings back all those beautiful memories. And I'm sure it does for your employees as well.
So glad you go there. And how old are some of the machines? Anything's from the 70s or the 60s?
Oh, yeah, quite a bit. I mean,
wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Some of them are barely electric. I mean, some of them are so mechanical and with the old solenoids and
the wheels, right?
Yep, exactly. Where everything is spring driven and it's just a wonderful experience. And we always enjoy it. And thank you for sharing that part of your life as well, because I think it's interesting always to find out. I mean, look at the way you lit up when you started talking about your pinball machine. So that's great. We're going to be transitioning to the next element of our interview together. And Richard, what I want to do here is allow people to get to know you a little bit better. And the way we do that is by asking a couple of questions. Some people call them silly questions. I like them. And they tend to provide insight into the individuals. So the first question is really about your aspirations. And the way I ask this question will tell us a lot about what you care about and who, in fact, in particular, you value. So who in all of space and time would you like to have 1 hour to enjoy a walk in the park, a quick lunch, or an intense conversation with?
That is the easiest answer that I could give you. It would be the late Miss Helen Keller.
Ooh, very nice. Tell me why.
Master communicator on so many levels, a genius in regards to mediums. There's a Helen Keller Institute in Costa Rica for blind and deaf children. Now, this individual back in the day, if you look at the photographs of her, she was beautiful and elegant and just shined. And you see her with Eisenhower and Kennedy and Mark Twain and with Charles Chaplin. And one of the things that she did in regards to her multiple ways of communication was to touch lips. Now, that is something that, once again, it's either your intimate partner, a doctor, or somebody you give permission to. But these very powerful, influential individuals in the world met with Helen Keller for just that reason, to meet a person that once again inspired the world. And so you're asking about the walk in the park, having lunch, and what we would talk about. It would really me being in awe of her experiences and explaining to me what drove her from one area of her existence into being one of the most amazing people that have ever lived in humanity. And so I would be asking a lot of communication questions, stimulation questions, how she was able to begin to create these languages and the sort of, since she couldn't see or hear, the sort of expansion that she got in regards to the other senses. I would love to know what she'd want to eat. If whatever it was, I would get her double of it, extra cheese, whatever she wanted.
Sure.
The walk in the park would just be more of sensation. I don't know what sort of positive reinforcement would be given to me, but once again, I would be drinking it all in. And so for me, this individual, once again, for communication, was a master communicator and a genius in regards to creating languages and getting individuals to gravitate towards her. So I guess I would just be trying to unlock as many secrets as she'd be willing to share with me.
That's beautiful. Well, again, out of almost over 300 episodes, you're the first person to say Helen Keller. So that's great. And I loved your reasoning as well. So, Richard, this is the grand finale. This is the change the world question. Are you ready?
Of course.
Okay. What is it that you're doing or would like to do that truly has the potential to literally change the world?
Well, you mentioned earlier about feeding families. And since I'm not as large as your 300 seats, I'm half of that, 150. But you know that each time you give someone stability, they are able to sustain their family. Now, in Costa Rica, there's multi-generational families. So there might be individuals taking care of their grandparents. And so what I am trying to do is to improve on self-reliance and self-confidence so I can be the last boss these individuals have. I can break the stereotype of being a boss that's looking to fire you. Now, mind you this, when you're an owner of a company, and you do know this, Mitch, that you have leverage, you could hire or fire, make or break somebody. You and I always chose the former. And so to me, it's very important, once again, in this delicate stage of people's lives, to put wind in their sails, to let them know that hard work does breed success, that an owner of a company doesn't mean you have to fear me. If you're showing up on time and doing a great job, I'm the first person that wants to promote you. And if you have an issue with that, that's on your end. And so I'm just trying to get in regards to maturity and clarity. And if I can meet these people in the middle and want to know the greatest positive reinforcement, when I'm in that game room in the morning playing my pinball, a lot of people will just touch me on the shoulder and say, "Good morning, Hefe, how are you?" The fact that you get the shoulder touch, no, that's amazing. They feel so comfortable with me.
That's great.
So that, my friend, all wrapping it up to you, I must be doing my job well to have somebody working with me that is comfortable enough to not only say good morning, tap me on the shoulder and wish me a great day.
That's great. That's great. It says a lot about you and your style. And those people are very lucky to have you as their boss. And I use the word boss in the traditional way. I know you're much more than that. You're more parental, I think, to a lot of these folks. And they look up to you and admire not just what you did for yourself, but what you're doing for others. So this is a very successful life. You should be very proud.
Thank you, my friend. And I am a guest here. And so I take that seriously. I follow the labor laws and I understood their culture and I mastered their language. And so regardless of being an owner of a company, I think they're seeing me just as a man with essence. And I can earn that mutual respect from the beginning, putting work aside.
Of course. Well, we're just about to wrap this up, but I do have one more question. And usually our guests are very generous and have something that they'd like to give to listeners. Is there something that you have that you'd like to give to listeners, either a download or a free gift of any sort?
I wish I did, but actually I'm not selling a thing today. I don't have a book or a seminar. I just want to extend my friendship.
Okay.
And as Confucius says, instead of exchanging money, I'd rather just exchange ideas.
Great.
And if my ideas today can assist somebody to find their balance and center, if they want to make more money or just have better relationships, then Mitch, you and I won. And we did exactly what we both set out to do today.
Richard, tell us the name of your company.
Costa Rica's Call Center.
Costa Rica's Call Center. And is there a web address that people can look you up on?
Of course. Costa Rica's callcenter.com. And they can give me a call toll free at 888-271-6750. And finally, Mitch, you'd find this interesting, especially you being in the BPO industry. I have a Facebook fan page of about 98,000 Costa Ricans there. It will really give you a pulse on the business process outsourcing industry in Costa Rica. And you do know about nearshore. We're close to the United States and Central America, 95% literacy because we put all that money back into education. There's no standing army. We have a democracy, great infrastructure, and it's really a wonderful place for expats to retire and people to build their business. And so it's been a wonderful 22 years I've been here. And as I say before, I've been very impressed with those that work with me.
That's wonderful. Well, again, Richard, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And I can't wait until we get a chance to talk again soon.
Mitch, I got to come visit you and you got to take me to that arcade, please.
You got a deal.
Thanks, pal.
Okay.